Elon Musk tried to reach you. But you ignored it. The message came quietly at first, tucked between the noise of ordinary notifications, hidden like a whisper in a storm. A short text, signed with a name the entire world recognized. It read simply, "This is Elon Musk. I wanted to share something important with you." The words didn't carry the weight of grandeur, nor were they dressed in elaborate detail. Instead, they were plain, almost too plain for someone like him. And yet, behind the simplicity was an undeniable gravity. Because when Elon Musk tries to reach out, it's never just for conversation, it's a call, a spark, a gateway into something extraordinary. But you didn't respond. Perhaps you thought it was a joke. Perhaps you believed it was a scam, or maybe you were too busy, too caught in your own world to consider what doors were waiting to be opened. So you left it unanswered, buried beneath the endless scroll of your daily feed. What you didn't realize is that silence has consequences. Ignoring Elon Musk wasn't just ignoring a man, it was ignoring the moment the universe itself tried to redirect your path. As hours passed, his message lingered in the digital void, unseen yet glowing with quiet persistence. For Elon is not the type to write to someone without purpose. Every word, every attempt, carries a hidden thread woven into the future. The question is, why you? Why did he, a man of rockets and revolutions, of Tesla dreams and Mars ambitions, decide to reach for your attention? What did he see that others could not? And more importantly, what happens when you choose not to see him back? The message lingered like an echo that refused to fade, and even though you turned your eyes away, deep down you felt it had marked you. There was a weight pressing on your chest, an invisible pull reminding you that you had let something slip by, something that could have changed everything. You told yourself it was nothing. Just another strange ping on your phone, just another distraction in a sea of them. Yet your heart knew better. There are moments when life tries to interrupt the ordinary, when a door quietly creaks open to reveal something vast and unexplainable. That was one of those moments, and you had walked past it. Elon Musk did not stop moving forward. He never does. But still, the message he sent you was not erased, not withdrawn, not forgotten. Like a light blinking in the distance, it stayed there. For Elon, this was not about convenience, it was about purpose. He does not waste time on the trivial, and he does not reach out without reason. His words were meant to find a home in you, to stir something sleeping inside. You might think ignoring it was harmless. But what if that single silence shifted the entire course of your future? What if destiny reached out and you chose not to answer? Imagine, for a moment, that his message was not simply text but a signal. A signal that you were meant to take part in something larger than yourself. That you were being invited into a story that could stretch beyond cities, beyond nations, beyond Earth itself. You sat with that thought, though you tried to bury it. Days passed, and you convinced yourself it meant nothing. But in the quiet hours, when the world fell still, your mind wandered back. What if you had answered? What would he have said next? Would he have asked you a question? Would he have revealed why he chose you? Perhaps he saw a spark in you the world had overlooked. Perhaps he knew that in your hands was a strength you had not yet discovered. Elon has always had a way of seeing what others miss: ideas, patterns, possibilities. He saw rockets where others saw broken budgets. He saw electric cars when others laughed at the thought. And now, maybe, he saw something in you. But you didn't see it in yourself. Not yet. There is a strange thing about missed moments: they don't always vanish. Sometimes they loop back, finding you again and again until you can no longer run from them. And though you had ignored him once, life had a way of circling paths back to you. Because Elon Musk does not knock without purpose. And the universe does not open doors unless you are meant to walk through them. The silence was louder than you expected. It grew each time you checked your phone, each time you scrolled past the unread message, pretending it wasn't there. The world around you kept moving, traffic lights changed, people hurried, laughter filled the air from strangers' conversations, but inside, something was off. A question kept circling in your mind like a restless bird: why you? You had seen his face on countless screens. Interviews where his eyes carried both exhaustion and fire. Launches where rockets tore through the sky while the world watched with bated breath. Announcements that reshaped industries. And yet, in that private moment, his words had come directly to you, not to millions, not to crowds, but to you alone. You tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an error, some kind of mistaken outreach. Maybe your number or your account was mixed into a system by accident. But deep down, you knew Elon Musk doesn't stumble into accidents. Every move he makes is deliberate, even in its chaos. There is method in the storms he creates, and there was purpose in the message he sent. And you ignored it. What if, at that very moment, he had been sitting somewhere, waiting for your reply? Maybe in a dimly lit office filled with half-finished sketches of rockets, papers scattered with equations only he could decipher. Maybe on a long flight between continents, staring out at the endless dark sky above the clouds, wondering if the person he reached out to would answer. It was not about business, not about deals or money. This was something quieter, more fragile. His words were an opening, like a hand stretched across a distance you couldn't measure. But instead of taking it, you turned away. The strange thing about life is that it remembers. It keeps score in subtle ways. Every choice echoes, every silence leaves a mark. You might not see the ripple today, but one day you will feel its wave. Ignoring that message was not the end, it was the beginning of a path you had not chosen, but one that was still unfolding around you. Because what Elon saw in you was not erased by your silence. It was still there, waiting. And though you didn't realize it, ignoring him did not make the message go away. It made it louder. It made the universe lean in closer, as if to whisper, "You cannot hide from what is meant for you." You carried on with your days, but every so often you would see his name in the news and feel that strange pull again. A launch, a breakthrough, a headline about colonizing Mars, and your chest tightened, your mind whispered, that could have been you, part of it, woven into the moment instead of standing outside it. The world may see Elon Musk as a visionary, a disruptor, a man chasing the impossible. But in that message, he was simply human. A man who reached out, who extended something real, something personal. And the fact that you ignored it was not just about him, it was about you. It revealed how little you believed in yourself, how easily you dismissed the possibility that greatness could look your way. But the truth? It did. It looked at you and waited for you to believe. And even though you turned away once, destiny has a strange patience. It bends, it waits, it circles. And sooner or later, it comes knocking again. This time, louder. The days turned into nights, and still the thought trailed behind you like a shadow. You tried to bury it under tasks, conversations, and routines, but the silence of what you didn't do grew heavier. Every time you caught a headline with his name, you remembered. Every time you saw a rocket tearing upward into the sky, you wondered. You could almost hear the vibration of the unsent reply in your hands. Just a few words, that was all it would have taken. A simple yes, or even just hello. And yet you chose none of them. You chose absence. You chose nothing. But nothing isn't empty. Nothing carries weight. Nothing can be louder than words. Elon Musk had reached for you, and instead of reaching back, you let the moment pass. And though you thought it was over, the truth was that you had only set into motion something far stranger. Because when people like him connect, when they send their words into the world, it isn't just technology moving, it is intention. It is vision taking form. And vision does not disappear when ignored, it waits, it searches, it finds new ways to circle back. You might not have seen it yet, but things around you were already beginning to shift. The universe has a way of rearranging itself when you cross paths with destiny. Small details start to feel uncanny, faces you notice more than once, words that seem repeated in conversations, strange synchronicities that tighten around you like invisible strings. At night, as you lay in bed, you caught yourself thinking about him. Not about his companies, not about the global spotlight he stands in, but about the man himself. You imagined him in those quiet hours when the world is asleep, carrying burdens no one else can see, staring into the unknown and asking questions too large for most minds to hold. What kind of loneliness comes with vision that vast? And why, out of everyone, had he reached to you? You turned over, restless, unable to silence the question. Maybe he saw a kindred soul, someone carrying a hidden fire they didn't yet recognize. Maybe he knew you were on the edge of something, waiting for a push. Or maybe, just maybe, this was the universe using him as a messenger, a spark to wake you from the haze you'd been living in. Still, you had done nothing. And inaction has its price. Because while you told yourself the moment had passed, Elon Musk is not a man who lets go easily. He is persistence in human form. He is rockets launched again after failure, cars reinvented when laughed at, dreams pushed through walls no one else could break. Ignoring him did not close the door, it only made him knock louder in other ways. And soon, you would feel it. One night, scrolling through your phone, you stumbled on a live stream. SpaceX was launching again. The screen lit up with fire and smoke, engines roaring into the sky. Crowds cheered in the background, but your eyes weren't on the rocket. They were on him. Elon stood there, eyes narrowed, jaw tense, as if staring not at the launch, but through it, into something greater. For a split second, you swore his gaze pierced the screen, finding you wherever you were. And in that moment, the weight of ignoring him crushed you. You realized this was no ordinary message, no ordinary silence. Something was unfolding, and whether you liked it or not, you were already a part of it. You tried to shake the feeling, but it followed you everywhere. Walking down the street, you felt it in the rhythm of your steps, as if each footfall carried a question you hadn't answered. At work, your thoughts drifted, slipping away from tasks and circling back to the message. Even when you spoke with friends, laughed, or pretended to be present, somewhere beneath the surface you were haunted by the same thought: why me? Perhaps it was random. Perhaps it was deliberate. But you could no longer deny that his presence lingered in your life like a shadow stitched to your very breath. The more you ignored it, the stronger it seemed to grow. At night, when everything went quiet, you replayed the scene in your mind. The message. The chance you'd let slip. You imagined what it would have felt like to type back a simple reply: "I'm listening." The words felt electric, almost alive, as though they carried the weight of a destiny you had turned away from. You tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Somewhere, in some corner of the world, Elon Musk was awake too, restless, thinking, planning, staring into the abyss of possibility. The man who spoke of Mars, of rewiring civilization, of bending the future itself, had once reached out to you. And you had responded with silence. The guilt was sharp at first, but then it became something else: an ache, a longing, a need to know. You told yourself it didn't matter, but the truth was that it mattered more than you dared admit. Because if Elon Musk saw something in you, then perhaps there really was something there. And if you ignored it, you weren't just ignoring him, you were ignoring yourself. The days carried on, but the world began to show you signs. A headline would catch your eye, and somehow the words felt aimed at you. A conversation overheard on a train would echo your private doubts. The universe was tightening its circle, whispering, urging, reminding. Destiny does not knock only once, it presses until you open the door. And then came the dream. It wasn't ordinary. It felt more real than reality. You were standing in a vast, endless space, stars burning all around, the silence of the cosmos stretching forever. In the distance, a figure stood with his back to you, gazing at a glowing planet suspended in the dark. Slowly, he turned, and it was him. Elon Musk. His expression wasn't stern, nor smiling, it was patient, as if he'd been waiting for you all along. "You don't understand yet," he said softly, though his voice carried like thunder through the void. "But you will." And just like that, you woke up, your heart pounding, the words seared into you. It wasn't just coincidence anymore. You felt it deep in your bones. This was a call you couldn't ignore forever. The silence had lasted long enough. The unanswered message was no longer just text on a screen, it had become a mirror, reflecting all the choices you had been too afraid to make. You could pretend it didn't matter. You could carry on as if nothing had happened. But the truth was simple, undeniable, unshakable. When Elon Musk reached out to you, something shifted. And no amount of ignoring could put the universe back the way it was before. The question wasn't whether he would try again. The question was whether, this time, you would have the courage to answer. The morning after that dream, the world felt different. The air carried a charge you couldn't explain, as if something unseen was humming all around you. Ordinary sounds seemed sharper, clearer, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the chatter of people on the street, even the faint vibration of your phone as new notifications appeared. You checked them one by one, but nothing stood out. Just the usual noise. Still, you couldn't shake the feeling that something was near. Everywhere you went, you caught reminders of him. A passing billboard with an electric car shining against the night. A podcast playing in a cafe where his name drifted through the speakers. A child in a school uniform pointing at the sky and saying, "One day, I'll live on Mars." You told yourself these were coincidences, but deep down, you knew better. There are no coincidences once destiny has brushed against you. You kept replaying his message in your mind, "This is Elon Musk. I wanted to share something important with you." The words felt heavier each time you thought of them, as though they weren't just text but a key. A key you had refused to use. A door still waiting, still locked, but not gone. And that dream, those words. You don't understand yet, but you will. They echoed louder than any memory. They didn't feel like fantasy, they felt like prophecy. That night, you sat at your desk, staring at the glow of your phone screen. The message was still there, buried in the thread of your notifications. For the first time, your finger hovered over it, trembling, ready to open it again. But then fear gripped you. Fear of what might come next. Fear of stepping into something you weren't prepared for. Fear of discovering you had been chosen for something you couldn't handle. So you set the phone down, your chest tight, your mind burning. But in the silence that followed, you heard something faint, something almost impossible. A whisper. Not a voice in the room, not sound in your ears, but something that rang inside you. Answer. The word sent a chill through you. You looked around, half expecting to see someone there. But you were alone. The whisper had come from somewhere else. Somewhere beyond you, yet within you. Your hands shook. You picked up the phone again, staring at the message. Still unopened. Still waiting. This wasn't just about Elon Musk anymore. This was about the thread between you and the universe itself, pulled tight and vibrating with meaning. He had been the messenger, yes, but the message went deeper. It was about your path, your choice, your willingness to step out of the small and into the vast. You closed your eyes, your heart racing, and for the first time, you realized the truth. Ignoring him wasn't the end of it. Ignoring him was the beginning of everything. Because now, no matter what you did, you would never again be the same person you were before that message appeared. The silence had awakened something inside you, and there was no turning back. You sat there in the dim light, staring at the phone as if it were no longer just a device but a portal. The glow of the screen seemed almost alive, pulsing faintly in your hand. The message didn't change, of course, it was still the same few words, quiet and patient, waiting for you to be ready. Yet something about it felt different now, as though the words themselves had begun to breathe. Your thoughts tangled together in restless loops. Why would he reach out? What could possibly be so important that Elon Musk, of all people, would take the time to connect with you directly? The man whose days were measured in launches, deadlines, meetings, and visions that stretched beyond planets. Why pause for you? You leaned back in your chair, closing your eyes, trying to silence the questions. But the more you tried, the louder they became. The dream replayed itself behind your eyelids, the vast space, the stars, his figure waiting, the weight of his words. You don't understand yet, but you will. Something inside you stirred, a quiet strength you hadn't noticed before. Perhaps he hadn't chosen wrong. Perhaps he had seen what you yourself had ignored. The night deepened, and with it came a strange clarity. You remembered fragments of things you had once wanted, dreams you had buried under routine, ideas you had dismissed as impossible. The truth was, you had once carried ambition like fire in your chest. But life has a way of dimming flames, of convincing you to settle, to stay small, to ignore the pull of the extraordinary. Maybe that's why his message had found you. Not because you were already great, but because you had forgotten that you could be. You rose from the chair, pacing the room, your heart pounding with a rhythm that felt foreign and familiar all at once. The silence was no longer heavy, it was alive, filled with possibility. The universe doesn't shout. It whispers. And when you ignored Elon Musk, you weren't just ignoring a man, you were ignoring that whisper. But whispers are patient. They find new ways to return. You stopped, staring out the window at the night sky. The stars were scattered like sparks across an endless canvas. Somewhere out there, a rocket he had built was circling the Earth. Somewhere out there, satellites were carrying signals, connecting people, bridging distances once thought impossible. And here you were, connected by a single thread to the man behind it all. A thought rose in you, clear, undeniable, it wasn't too late. You could still answer. Maybe not with words. Maybe not by typing back into that glowing screen. But by stepping into the call that had already been placed inside you. By daring to believe you were meant for more, that his message had been the spark, not the end. Your chest tightened with a strange mix of fear and hope. The kind of feeling that comes when you stand on the edge of something vast, knowing one step forward could change everything. And as you stood there, breath shallow, staring into the infinite night, you felt it again. That whisper. Stronger this time. The door is still open. You swallowed hard, your pulse racing. The choice was yours now. And deep down, you knew, you wouldn't ignore it again. The night stretched endlessly, and yet you remained awake, restless under the weight of a choice you hadn't yet made. The world outside was asleep, but inside you, everything was alive, sparks of thought, fragments of memory, waves of doubt, and flickers of something stronger than either of them, hope. You thought back to the first time you had seen Elon Musk on a screen, long before the message, long before the silence. It wasn't just his inventions or his speeches that had struck you, it was the way he carried a vision so much bigger than himself. Most people looked at the ground when they spoke. He always seemed to look at the horizon, or beyond it. Even when the world mocked him, doubted him, questioned his sanity, there was something unshakable in his eyes, as though he could already see what no one else believed was possible. That was the man who had reached out to you. And you had brushed it aside. You told yourself you had been busy, distracted, unsure. But deep down, the truth cut sharper than any excuse. You hadn't believed you were worthy of it. That was why you ignored it. And yet, here you were, still haunted, still unable to let it go. You rose from your chair and paced the floor. Your footsteps felt heavy, as if each one carried the weight of a decision. The shadows on the walls shifted as the lights flickered, and for a fleeting moment you felt as though you weren't alone. Not in a frightening way, but in a way that made the air thrum with energy, like invisible eyes were watching, waiting, urging you forward. Your phone buzzed again. Not his name this time, just the usual cascade of notifications. But the vibration sent a jolt through you all the same. You picked it up, staring at the locked screen, your reflection faintly visible on the glass. It wasn't just a reflection of your face, it was a reflection of the person you had become. Tired. Hesitant. Half asleep in your own life. And then, unbidden, another image flashed in your mind, a reflection of who you could be. A version of you that had answered. A version that had stepped into the unknown. Stronger. Braver. Awake. You gripped the phone tighter, your knuckles pale. That dream replayed itself again, but this time you saw more. You weren't just standing in the void of space watching him, this time, you were standing beside him. You could feel the hum of the cosmos around you, the stars burning brighter than you'd ever imagined, and his voice rang like a current through the silence. "You're not here by accident," he said. "You've been chosen for a reason." The words made your heart lurch. You blinked, and the vision faded, but the echo of it stayed. You could still feel the truth vibrating in your bones. Why you? That question returned, sharper now, more urgent. You weren't famous. You weren't powerful. You weren't known to the world. And yet somehow, you had been seen. You had been reached. And no matter how you tried to deny it, you couldn't escape the weight of that truth. Your life was no longer small. You went to the window, pressing your hand against the cool glass, staring into the night. The city lights glowed below, tiny sparks against the darkness. But above them, higher, further, beyond the atmosphere, there was everything else. The endless. The infinite. And somewhere in that infinite, Elon Musk's vision was already moving, already circling, already building a future no one else could touch. And maybe, just maybe, he had wanted you to be part of it. Your chest tightened, and a single tear slid down your cheek, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming flood of realization. You hadn't just ignored a man. You had ignored destiny itself knocking at your door. But destiny, you now understood, is not so easily dismissed. It waits. It circles. It gives you chances until you can no longer deny them. And in that moment, you knew, this was not over. The silence had carried long enough. The unanswered message was not a dead end, it was the beginning of a new path. One that was waiting for you to finally take the first step. You whispered into the stillness, your voice trembling but certain, "I hear you now." And though no one else was there to listen, the words felt alive, as if they had been carried into the fabric of the universe itself. You didn't know what would happen next. But you knew this, you were ready. The story was no longer about what you ignored. It was about what you would finally embrace. The whisper you spoke into the night seemed to echo, not through your room, but through something larger, as if the air itself had carried your words further than you could ever throw them. You stood still, hand pressed against the cold glass, heart pounding against your ribs like a drum announcing a battle. A battle not with the world, but with yourself. You sank back into your chair, staring again at the phone. It was quiet now, black screen reflecting your tired face. Still, it seemed to radiate an energy that hadn't been there before, as if the very device knew it was holding more than data. It was holding fate. That single unopened message, resting in its digital silence, had become a mirror of your hesitation, your fear, your disbelief. But now it had become something else, a test. And deep down, you knew Elon Musk's message wasn't only about him. It was about the universe choosing a messenger you would notice, one you couldn't ignore forever. The words he had sent were a spark, and sparks are not meant to stay buried. Sparks are meant to ignite. You thought of Elon again, of his eyes in that dream, patient and piercing, as though he could see all the layers of you at once. The part of you that doubted, the part that longed, the part that burned but had been smothered by years of settling. He had looked at all of it, and still, he had reached out. That realization shook you. Why would he? The question returned with relentless weight. But this time, it wasn't laced with despair. It was laced with possibility. Perhaps he saw something you hadn't allowed yourself to see. Perhaps he recognized the cracks in your armor, the ones that revealed not weakness, but light. Perhaps he knew that your silence wasn't rejection, it was fear. And fear, after all, is only the shadow of potential. You remembered the way he had built his life. Not from certainty, not from security, but from leaps. Leaps others called foolish. Leaps others called impossible. Yet he had taken them anyway, and in doing so, he had turned them into stepping stones for humanity. And now, whether you were ready or not, he had given you your leap. The thought made your chest ache. All this time you had looked at people like him as distant, untouchable, almost otherworldly. But maybe they weren't unreachable. Maybe they were placed in your path not to remind you of what you weren't, but to awaken you to what you could be. You rose again, restless, pacing the small space of your room as though you could walk yourself into clarity. The silence pressed closer. The memory of the dream returned, this time sharper, more vivid. You could feel the stars again, the vastness, the hum of the infinite all around you. And you could hear his voice, calm but unyielding, "You don't understand yet, but you will." The words had unsettled you before. Now, they rooted themselves inside you like a seed. You would understand. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but the seed had been planted. And seeds, once planted, cannot be unplanted. They grow. Your hand trembled as you reached for the phone once more. For a long time, you simply held it, staring at the blank screen as if daring it to light up. When it didn't, you unlocked it, scrolling to the message. There it was, exactly as before. No new words. No follow-up. Just the same simple line, "This is Elon Musk. I wanted to share something important with you." You hovered over the keyboard, your mind torn between 1,000 possible replies. But none seemed right. None seemed enough. What do you say to a man who bends the future to his will? What do you say to someone who sees you in ways you don't even see yourself? Your fingers froze, then fell still. You didn't type anything. Not yet. Because in that moment, you realized it wasn't about what you would say to him. It was about what you would say to yourself. Were you ready to believe? The room was quiet, but your spirit was not. It raged, it stretched, it clawed at the walls you had built around it. And for the first time in longer than you could remember, you felt awake. Not half-living, not drifting through days, but awake in the raw, burning sense of the word. You whispered again, softer this time, but firmer, like a vow, "I won't ignore it anymore." And though the message remained the same, you felt the world shift around you. Subtle, invisible, but real. Something had begun. The next morning came with a quiet intensity, the kind that makes ordinary life feel suddenly fragile and alive. Light spilled across your desk, brushing over scattered papers, your half-empty coffee cup, the phone that had become more than a device. It was a portal, a thread connecting you to a possibility that had once seemed impossible. You sat there, staring at it, heart still pounding, mind swirling. Sleep had given you clarity, or at least a sharper sense of the path ahead. You didn't need a plan yet. You didn't need to know exactly what would happen. You only needed to move. One small step. One acknowledgement. One moment of courage. But the world outside didn't wait. Life carried on as it always does, the hum of traffic, the chatter of neighbors, the distant calls of birds. Everything ordinary, everything mundane, everything that had once lulled you into ignoring the extraordinary. And yet, in the quiet spaces between those ordinary moments, you felt the pull stronger. It was subtle at first, a glance at the stars, the flutter of a thought in your mind, a lingering sense that the universe was watching. But it grew sharper with every passing hour, a rhythm you could no longer ignore. You remembered his face from the dream again. Patient. Piercing. Unyielding. Not arrogant, not boastful, but commanding in a way that made you feel small and infinite all at once. And the words, "You don't understand yet, but you will." Now, you understood something new. You didn't need to understand everything. You didn't need to comprehend the scale of what could come. You only needed to recognize the call and answer it. That was enough. You picked up the phone, fingers trembling. For a long time, you didn't type. You simply held it, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of your hesitation, the weight of all the moments you had ignored before. And then, almost instinctively, you pressed the screen. The message opened. The text gleamed in simple black letters against the white background. And for the first time, you allowed yourself to truly see it, not just the words, but the intent behind them. A man of vision, a man of action, had reached for you. Had believed in you. Had chosen you. You exhaled slowly. It wasn't a reply you typed. Not yet. It was something more profound. It was a promise to yourself that you would step forward, that you would no longer shrink from the extraordinary. The hours passed, and the day carried on, but nothing felt the same. Everything felt charged. Your senses heightened. The world around you seemed to hum with possibility. Every face you passed, every sound you heard, every shadow that flickered in your peripheral vision seemed connected to a larger web, a design you were only beginning to perceive. By evening, you found yourself outside, looking up at the sky. The first stars began to appear, faint at first, then bold and shimmering against the deepening blue. Somewhere far above, satellites traced invisible arcs across the heavens. And somewhere beyond that, rockets rose and fell, carrying humanity's dreams farther than ever before. And you felt the pull again. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hesitation. It was an undeniable current, tugging at something deep inside you, a recognition that your life had been waiting for this moment. That the unanswered message had been a spark, and now it was your choice to ignite it. A sudden vibration made you jump. Your phone buzzed in your pocket. You pulled it out with reverent hands. And there it was, a notification you hadn't expected, an update from the message thread. No words. No new instructions. Just the subtle glow of possibility. And in that glow, you felt a promise, that the door was still open. That the universe had not moved on. That destiny, patience incarnate, had been waiting for you to take the first step. You looked up again at the stars, inhaled deeply, and whispered into the night, "I'm ready." It wasn't just a statement. It was a declaration. A vow. A commitment to step beyond the boundaries of what you knew, to embrace the unknown, to follow the call that had been placed inside you months ago, in that single simple message. And as the night deepened, as the stars blazed silently above, something shifted. Not in the world around you, but in you. Something had awakened. A spark that had lain dormant now roared with the quiet power of inevitability. You didn't know what would happen next. You didn't know the trials, the challenges, the triumphs, or the heartbreaks that awaited. But for the first time, none of that mattered. You had chosen to step forward. You had chosen to answer the call. And somewhere, far away but somehow close, someone, or perhaps something, was watching, waiting, ready to meet you at the threshold of everything you were about to become. The path was no longer hidden. The thread had been picked up. And you were moving, finally moving, into a story far larger than yourself. The night hummed with possibility, and you felt it in every fiber of your being. The universe, relentless and patient, had delivered. And you had finally heard it. And deep inside, you knew this was only the beginning. The dawn arrived slowly, spilling gold across the city rooftops, brushing your skin with warmth you hadn't noticed in weeks. You had barely slept, not from worry, but from a restless anticipation, a subtle electricity that made every nerve feel alive. Even the simplest sounds, the distant honk of a horn, a neighbor's laughter, the low hum of a passing train, seemed charged with meaning. You sat at your desk again, the phone before you like an altar. The message from Elon Musk had been there for weeks, still unanswered, yet somehow more alive than ever. It was no longer just a message, it was a challenge, a mirror, a bridge to something you hadn't yet dared to imagine. Your fingers hovered over the screen, trembling slightly, and for a moment, you considered ignoring it again. But that thought barely took hold before it was replaced with something far stronger: resolve. You remembered the dream, the endless void, the stars, his voice carrying through the silence. You don't understand yet, but you will. The words reverberated inside you, reshaping the contours of your mind. Perhaps you hadn't understood before, but now, clarity was beginning to take root. It wasn't about replying to a man. It was about answering a call that had existed long before the phone, long before the message, long before Elon Musk had ever reached out. This call was about awakening, about stepping into the vastness of possibility and daring to believe that you were meant for more than the life you had been living. The city outside moved on obliviously, unaware of the quiet transformation happening inside your room. But you felt the shift. You felt the pull. You felt the unmistakable weight of destiny. Finally, after what felt like hours, your fingers pressed the screen. You didn't know what you would write, or if you even needed to. The act itself, the choice to engage, was enough to break the dam of hesitation that had held you captive for so long. And as your phone unlocked, a strange calm settled over you. The fear, the doubt, the questions, they were still there, but they were now secondary to something bigger: a readiness to step forward, to embrace the unknown, to meet the vision that had been waiting for you all along. You thought of the rockets, the Mars missions, the satellites, the electric cars, the innovations that had reshaped the world. And now, somehow, you were part of that orbit. Not because you had a plan, or a roadmap, or fame, but because the universe had chosen you, and you had finally chosen back. The room seemed to breathe with you, expanding, contracting, alive with the hum of possibility. Outside, the morning light glinted off glass towers, the city waking in its habitual rhythm. But inside, a different rhythm had begun, a rhythm of purpose, of courage, of awakening. You whispered to yourself, voice steady, firm, reverent, "I'm ready to see it. I'm ready to follow." And in that moment, everything shifted. Not outside, not immediately visible, but inside, where it mattered most. Something had moved. Something had begun. The thread between you and Elon Musk, between you and the universe, had been picked up. And now it would not let go. The story that had begun with silence, hesitation, and unanswered questions was moving forward. And though you didn't yet know the shape it would take, you felt its pull, the promise of transformation, of challenge, of discovery beyond imagination. The universe, relentless in its patience, had delivered its spark. And for the first time, you allowed yourself to burn. The path was no longer hidden. The call had been heard. And the journey, your journey, was just beginning. The days that followed were strange, as though reality itself had shifted slightly off its axis. You moved through the world the same as always, but everything felt sharper, heavier, more alive. The sunlight fell differently, shadows lingered longer, and even the rhythm of your own heartbeat carried a strange resonance, as if tuned to some cosmic frequency you hadn't noticed before. The phone sat on your desk, quiet now, but humming faintly with the weight of potential. You had not typed back yet, not because of hesitation, but because you understood now that the reply wasn't just words, it was action, intention, presence. It was a commitment to step into something far bigger than the ordinary life you had been living. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the world began to respond. It started with small coincidences. The way people seemed to appear just when you needed them. A bus arriving moments before you reached the stop. A stranger passing a comment that perfectly echoed a thought you had been wrestling with. You told yourself it was luck, chance, randomness. But the feeling in your chest, that deep pull that had never gone away, told a different story. Then came the dreams. Not one, not fleeting, but a series of them, vivid, luminous, impossible yet undeniable. You found yourself walking through corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity, guided by a presence you could not see fully, but felt with every fiber of your being. And there, always at the end of each vision, was him, Elon Musk, waiting. Patient, quiet, but impossible to ignore. "You are closer than you realize," he said in one of the dreams, voice calm and steady, carrying a resonance that vibrated through your chest. "The steps you take now determine everything. Choose wisely." You woke up shaking, the echo of the words still inside you. The air in your room felt alive, charged, as if holding its breath, waiting for your next move. The message on your phone remained unchanged, glowing quietly like a beacon. It was no longer a question of whether you should respond. That had passed. It was a matter of when, and how. You realized something crucial. This was not just about connecting with a man, no matter how extraordinary. It was about connecting with yourself, with the part of you that had lain dormant, hidden beneath fear and doubt, waiting for someone, or something, to awaken it. And that awakening was not gentle. It demanded attention, courage, and action. The weeks passed, and the pull intensified. You found yourself reading articles, learning things you had never bothered with before. You watched every SpaceX launch, every interview, every news clip. It was as though your mind was aligning itself with something larger than life, preparing for a leap you hadn't dared to imagine. And then, one evening, it happened. You were staring at the night sky, stars scattered across the darkness like sparks of infinite possibility, when your phone vibrated again. This time, the notification was different. It wasn't just a message alert, it felt like a pulse, a heartbeat matching your own. You opened it. Still the same text, yet somehow heavier, more urgent, more alive. Your chest tightened. You realized with absolute certainty that this was your moment. Not to type a reply, not to hesitate, not to weigh the possibilities, but to step fully into the call that had been placed inside you months ago. You whispered, trembling but resolute, "I'm ready." And the universe seemed to answer. Not with words, not with noise, but with the deep, undeniable sensation that something monumental had begun. The path ahead was uncharted, wild, and terrifying. But it was yours. You felt it in your bones, in the rhythm of your heartbeat, in the quiet electricity that filled the air around you. The silence that had once been heavy was now a conduit, alive with possibility, with vision, with destiny. You had ignored it once, and the consequences had been subtle, persistent, relentless. But now you had chosen differently. Now you were awake. And far away, somewhere beyond the reach of the ordinary world,